Hello and welcome to a special edition of Defend Your Faith. And Happy New Year. So when does the new year begin? So for us in the West, we've been in 2025 now for a couple of weeks. But on January 29th, hundreds of millions of people around the world will be celebrating the Lunar New Year in China, Vietnam, and other countries of East Asia, and in many Asian ethnic communities elsewhere in the world, including right here in California. The calendar used is based on the moon, and the new year occurs a few weeks to a month or so later than the Roman calendars we as Westerners use. Most of us in the West think of the Chinese culture as a non-Christian one, but many missionaries and indigenous Chinese believers have noted some strong indications of an early knowledge of the events in the book of Genesis in the traditional Chinese language. Events such as creation, the fall of man, Noah's flood, and the dispersion from Babel seem to appear in the pictograms, the tiny pictorial characters the Chinese use in their writing system. These potential links between the ancient Chinese culture and the events of Genesis would be, one example of this would be the word in Chinese for a large ocean-going ship, a large sailing ship. And so they use the term an 8-person boat. And it makes you think of 1 Peter. 1 Peter tells us that Noah was one of 8 people who survived the worldwide flood. And there's a book that discusses this at length called Genesis and the Mystery Confucius Couldn't Solve. And I recall that in that book, it mentions some of the rituals that the Chinese people did in ancient times up until 1912, when the last Chinese monarchy ended. And one of these rituals was the emperor would do a sort of Day of Atonement, honoring the one true God of heaven, and the Chinese called this one true God Shang-Ti. And it sounds a lot like the autumn holidays that the Israelites would do and that continue to be done in Judaism today. Think of Yom Kippur. And this might be surprising to us, but if you look at Romans 1, the New Testament seems to be saying that all societies once had knowledge of the one true God. Plus, we don't know how much of an impact the ancient Israelites might have had in the world of the past too, and how much of Judaism might have been shared as well. And while we're on the topic of China, you think of modern China, and it's the world's largest officially atheistic country today. Since 1949, the government there, which was established by the dictator Mao Zedong, has officially rejected religion, even the traditional beliefs of the Chinese people. Believers in God have been persecuted, particularly Christians. And you think of the restrictions that the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, has put on people of faith. And they actually allow a lot of Christianity and churches and the Bible to be taught, except for certain parts. And they ban the teaching of Genesis, and they ban the teaching of end times. And it shows just how important our beliefs in creation and our beliefs of eschatology are, because that's kind of like the beginning and the end of our faith, and it puts into reality what we believe as Christians. Also would point out too that the Chinese government is always being criticized around the world for an abysmal human rights record. And that's not what we should see if the claims of secularists in our society are correct, because an atheistic country like China should be a progressive utopia. But that's not what we see. What we see is atheistic countries are always leading the way in destructive government systems. And that's true whether you're talking about the communist leaders of the Soviet Union, or Hitler, or other dictators of the past 100 years. Atheism doesn't have a good record in modern times. So I want to wish all who celebrate Lunar New Year or the traditional New Year a blessed year. And we as Christians know that this year and every year since Jesus' first coming is the year of our Lord. But it's up to us to make Jesus the Lord of our year. So happy 2025.